There's a lot of good science out there from the Gottman Institute where if you want to have a satisfying marriage, for every negative interaction, you need 5 positive ones. Well, as couples, we have a lot of neutral interactions where we're just kind of doing business, right? And then there's some tension and then you get some good sprinkled in there. But that 5-to-1, that golden ratio that we talk about, that's not an easy thing to achieve in a busy, full life. And so the question is, how do you maintain that intentionality? And even if you are desiring to be intentional, what exactly do you do? And how do you remember to do it? So this is where one of the benefits of Act Agape is we really get into the application side. We don't just stop with understanding conceptually how our spouse experiences love, but we drop down into the specifics.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Art of Espousing podcast, and happy Thanksgiving week.
Absolutely. And let us kick it off by letting you know how thankful we are for every listener who's a part of the Art of Espousing community. We are so grateful for you and your support.
Yeah, we hope you've had a great couple of weeks since our last episode. We've been going fast and furious for the last few weeks, and so now we're really looking forward to this week with our family.
That's right. Our daughter Addie is home from college, and our oldest daughter Alex is coming in from New York. So we'll have all the kids home for Thanksgiving. It's going to be a great week. Even though we're empty nesters, we still love our kids.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's good to have them home. Lisa, you know what else is going on this week?
What?
This is a great week because it's the game.
Turkey?
No, not the turkey game. The Ohio State Buckeyes will be taking on the team up north, which is also known as Michigan.
Oh my goodness! I just heard that they were renamed. They're no longer the Wolverines.
Oh, you're gonna go there? Yeah,
they're the Cheetahs.
The Cheetahs, yeah.
No, we don't say things bad about people. We love that. I'm glad that this is such a big, like Thanksgiving and the Michigan game. Those really go hand in hand.
Because being from Ohio, it's like
the
that
big
time of
rivalry.
the year. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, today we're going to introduce you to a really cool app for your marriage called Act Agape, and we have the co-founder, Dr. Scott Symington, on the podcast with us, and you're going to want to hear about this tool. But before we jump in, we want to talk to you about the marriage reboot. With 2023 wrapping up and a brand new year right around the corner, now is a great time to plan on an investment into your marriage in 2024. And a great investment would be scheduling a 2-day marriage reboot with Lisa and I.
The Marriage Reboot is an exclusive one-on-one experience that will empower you to uncover your marriage purpose and actually start living into it. The process is designed to bring clarity to every aspect of your marriage. Together, we will craft plans for multiple domains of your life, creating a solid framework that will help you manage and renew your relationship in the future.
During this private experience, you and your spouse will have our undivided attention as your dedicated marriage coaches. We're going to guide you and help you identify where you've been, define where you are now, and discover where you want to go together in the future. The Marriage Reboot is designed for marriages in all stages, and we know that it will make a huge difference in your marriage.
You can find out more at artespousing.com/marriage coaching. You can also message us on Instagram, and we'll send you a link to schedule a 30-minute call with James and I to hear more about that experience. So now let's jump into our conversation about Act Agape.
Scott, it is so great to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for taking some time just to be on the show with us and talk to us about Act Agape.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So we've been so excited to introduce you and Act Agape to our audience. To get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how the Act Agape project started?
Yeah, so my wife and I and our 2 children, we live in Pasadena, California. And I've had a private practice here for the last 17 years. And a lot of my work is focused on marital therapy. And, along the way, I've always been interested in trying to help couples outside the therapy room because they parachute in maybe for 50 minutes a week, and then they leave where they live the vast majority of their life, and just wanting to equip them with different tools or strategies to have connection and warmth and positive behaviors outside the therapeutic space. And so about 7 years ago, I developed this just simple, effective way of helping couples increase loving behavior in the midst of their busy lives, right? Because that's a challenge, right? We're overwhelmed, we're distracted, we have a lot going on, and maintaining that intentionality, can be challenging, or know exactly how to integrate effective loving behaviors, right, in the midst of the busyness. So I developed this method, and it started off as paper and pencil and just massaging it along the way, and then sharing with colleagues, and other therapists started using it. And so then fast forward a couple of years ago, a group of us got together, therapists and some professors of marriage and family therapy and some church leaders, with this idea of making what is now known as the Agape method more readily accessible, available to couples, and to create an app. So there's a lot more to it, but again, I don't want to hear myself talking the entire time.
No, that's amazing. When we were first introduced to the app, we had a young couple who was kind of beta testing it for us, and they were just so excited about the discoveries. And we've been, testing with a group of us, and Lisa and I have been using it, and
we've learned some things. So it really is a helpful tool. Mm-hmm. But before we get into the methodology and a little bit about the app, when you were putting this together and you're working with this group, what was it that made you feel like there needed to be a tool in the marketplace for marriages?
Most people are familiar with the 5 love languages and Gary Chapman, and really it's a gift what he created and started. I mean, here we are decades later, and it's now in the vernacular, right? What's your love language, right? And the pain point that and also Act Agape is touching is this unspoken question that often happens in marriage, especially more mature marriages when you're down the road a few years, which is, why don't I feel more loved? Mm-hmm. I know my spouse loves me and cares about me, but why don't I feel it more? And we're not necessarily announcing that to people, because we also know our spouse is loving and we're aware of that, but there is a part of it's like, but why don't I feel more care and support and love? So there is a real pain point in there. And part of it is, in order to have a warm, connected, healthy relationship, it requires ongoing intentionality. We cannot put our marriages on cruise control.
Right.
And in addition, there's a lot of, good science out there from Gottman and the Gottman Institute, where if you want to have a satisfying marriage, for every negative interaction, you need 5 positive ones. Well, as couples, we have a lot of neutral interactions where we're just kind of doing business, right? And then there's some tension, and then you get some good sprinkled in there. But that 5-to-1, that golden ratio that we talk about, that's not an easy thing to achieve in a busy, full life. And so the question is, how do you maintain that intentionality? And even if you are desiring to be intentional, what exactly do you do? And how do you remember to do it? So this is where one of the benefits of Act Agape, the app, is we really get into the application side. Mm-hmm. We don't just stop with understanding conceptually how our spouse experiences love, but we drop down into the specifics along the lines of, like, a generous and helpful act would be, I feel loved when you finish doing the dishes and ask me to decompress on the couch, or, when you inquire about a known stressor in my life, where we make it action oriented, because people often have difficulty translating the larger label. Let's say, wow, acts of service or another love language is important, into an action that we're confident will land, that speak to our partner's heart, right? So taking it one step further. And then we also need to be reminded of it in the midst of our busy lives. And that's where, and I'm sure we'll get into it, kind of our innovative messaging system goes. So to answer your question more succinctly in this moment, our marriages really need intentionality.
Yeah. So good.
And it needs to be smart intentionality, effective intentionality. And so that's what we created as a tool for that.
We've been married 30 years, and we started using this app. I know James' love language. He knows mine. Just to speak to what you're talking about, we've been operating in that. His love language is words of affirmation. Mine's acts of service. So, but interesting enough, in Act Agape, the app, I've been noticing some things that he appreciates, which you actually highlighted, is that I would do the dishes and he he can decompress. So James does most of the cooking in our house now because I've been cooking for 20 years for kids. He's kind of taken over that role. Thank you so much. So for me to do the dishes and him decompress, I actually didn't know that. And that really is more, to me, it's an act of, acts of service, which I wouldn't have thought is something that he would appreciate. And so when that popped up, the app reminded me, and in the morning I was like, oh, okay. So I was like excited for dinner to come so that I could actually go, oh, you decompress. You go sit in there, mister, and decompress. I got the dishes. And so.
But the funny thing about that is we were just having this conversation because she asked me, she said, did you type that in? I'm like, I don't think so. But I think that's the power of the tool, is that sometimes we have a hard time expressing those intentional things that would actually express love to us. So to actually have some tools that you can kind of go, I was able to identify that. If she asked me that, I probably wouldn't have come up with that.
No, right. That's why I was like, did you type that in? I couldn't see options where you could type in what you wanted to type in.
No, I typed in all the stuff about sex.
No.
That's what I typed in.
Yeah. So that's really, well, first of all, it's fun discovering those nuances, right? The same thing with my wife and I. We discover kind of new things about each other, even though we know each other well. But you're right too. When you build your agape list, and I think I'm jumping ahead here a little bit, but when you build this agape list, right, which is how I feel loved, valued, and respected in the relationship, there is this kind of master list that you can choose from. Right. So I have close to 25,000 clinical hours, and I've heard everything under the sun. I've heard all the top affirmations or ways that couples want to be prioritized. So we do have these built-in master lists because it is easier to recognize something than self-generate it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So we can be like, oh, it maybe, or, oh yeah, that, but I wouldn't necessarily have generated that on my own. Right. And then it speaks to me. But yeah, within the app too, you can create unique love items, as well. You don't have to settle for that master list. But I have found that it's kind of nice to just be able to spot it, tap it, and it throws it on your list.
Exactly. Well, you didn't jump ahead at all. So you're right into what we were going to ask next, is just to unpack some of the nuts and bolts of the app and tell us how Agape app works.
The heart and soul of it is this agape method. And agape, as you all know, is that Greek word for the highest form of love, which is a kind of a sacrificial, like putting the other's interests above our own, which is key for a healthy marriage. We also have transformed that word agape into an acronym that represents the 5 primary ways that we express and receive love. So it's sort of our version of the 5 love languages. So that first A of agape is affirmations. Sounds like that's top of your list, James.
Yep.
I think everybody appreciates affirmation, but some more than others. Then G of agape, generous and helpful acts. The second A of agape, affection, physical intimacy. P is prioritizing relationship, and then E is empathy. So those are the 5 broad categories. And you'll notice we include empathy in the 5 pillars, which is, in our mind, just foundational to a healthy marriage, like being very explicit and having a real understanding, a concrete understanding in how our spouse receives empathy and getting specific about that. So you have these 5 categories, but we drop down and operationalize it. So under empathy, like the example I gave before, my wife feels loved when I inquire about a known stressor in her life, right? So when that reminder comes in, right, then I can follow up on, something that is weighing on her. So that's the basic model. So then with the app, it introduces you to the agape method, and then it helps you build your agape list. I look through the affirmations, I tap on those that resonate, and then it takes me to generous and helpful acts all the way through empathy, and boom, I have identified this very concrete list of this is how I feel loved in the relationship. Then I invite my partner to do the same. And then it kind of swaps list, or it gives me access then to Melissa's list, which is really a pathway to her heart. It's giving me a specific pathway to the things that really resonate with her heart. So after we pair on the app and we have each other's agape list, then the app prompts me to set love goals. Okay. And love goals is essentially, okay, Scott, how many times a week do you want to intentionally love Melissa? Like, okay, well, let's start with 5 intentional acts a week. And if I select 5, then 5 out of the 7 days, it will grab an item from Melissa's Agape list and then creatively populate my phone with it. Could be a text, it could be an email, could be a push notification. We even have voice technology. She's not aware of when I receive that love notification. And that is an important piece of the app. I'm focused on expressing my best loving self and trusting her to do the same. So that reminder, it comes in, and then I can either act on that specific reminder, or I consult her broader Agape list and see if there's a different loving action that I could do. Essentially, what we're trying to do is just tip couples towards love in the midst of their busy lives, right? And create a virtuous cycle of loving behavior.
It's really cool. I know that when I get my alert, it actually comes on my iWatch. And Lisa's picture always shows up on my iWatch. It's like a goofy picture you put in there. Something.
I did put a goofy.
She put a goofy picture. So anytime that picture shows up on my watch, I know that I'm getting something from her Agape list. So it's really cool. It's just, it just pops up randomly throughout the day and reminds me of like, here's something you can do today to express love.
I'm sure you appreciate that the swap out thing to look at the broader, because I know that one of mine is to complete a honeydew task. So on that list, I don't know exactly how it says it, but that is like, of course, my love language, acts of service, but like finishing and completing that. But that day that reminds you to do that, you may not have time to do that. So that's nice. He has the swap option, but just don't swap that suggestion too many times.
Exactly.
You have. I'm just saying, just don't let it.
Right.
The easier one is when she says she's shown love by when I hug her, because I can hug her all the time. But
that's right. Yeah.
Right.
There's another piece of the software, the love DNA. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. The love DNA scan. That is an assessment that you take, and it will help you sort of understand your love wiring and your partner's love wiring. So our take is a little bit different on this. And that's why we went from a love DNA test to a scan. When you're developing an assessment tool, one of the things that you're looking for is repeatability, right? So if I give you an assessment today, it should look pretty similar 2 weeks from today or a year from now, right? That's how you kind of examine its reliability. Mm-hmm. So as we were constructing the love DNA test, which it was before, where, you could discover, okay, what's most important to me, affirmations or empathy or being prioritized, whatever. Over time, we noticed that it wasn't necessarily repeating in the way that we would have expected. And it's like, oh, wow, we've got a bad assessment here, right? We got to keep working on it. But then over time, what we realized is, well, wait a minute. No. What we're seeing is individuals tend to gravitate towards certain love languages.
Right.
But then there is some fluidity depending on what's going on in their lives. When I was launching Act Agape and had a full private practice, what shifted on Melissa's list was prioritizing the relationship. She wanted more time with me, understandably, because I was so preoccupied with trying to do. So there are seasons where we need more empathy or more affirmation. So that's why then we shifted to scan it. So you scan your relationship every month or so, and then it tells a story, especially if there's a shift that you're basically saying, oh, my spouse is needing a little bit more kind of empathy or affirmations because of what's going on over here, maybe at work or something. So it was even more of a helpful tool than we realized. It was not only highlighting how you're wired, but what your partner's most needing now seasonally.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I can imagine even before it became an app, seeing that you had this as a tool within therapy with married couples, that the compound effect of these small acts of love expressed in action or a word really make a difference. But have you seen, do you have any stories of just couples, again, it could be not from the app, but in therapy, but of using this kind of tool?
Yeah. I've lots of stories, even personal ones. I'll give you a couple of examples. So last week, I had a love notification coming in that Melissa feels loved when I hold her and tell her that everything's going to be okay. Now, what's interesting about that is that would not be anything that I would want from her. I'd be like, I know it's okay. I would like squirm.
Yeah.
Okay. But she's not me. right? She's not me. So the more kind of distant we are, or whatever that love item is, the harder it is for us to remember, right? Because it's not us, right? But again, it's not about me. It's about how she experiences love. So that came in. I usually get my love notifications in the morning. It came in. I'm like, okay, all right, I'm going to find an opportunity to do this. It's not me as it is. So later that evening, we're cooking dinner or whatever. And I walk up to her. I'm like, okay, here's the opportunity. And I'm like, come here, honey. And I hold her and I just say, honey, everything's going to be okay. Right. And we had a moment and it drew that out of me, something that I was a little uncomfortable doing, but actually it felt good in the moment. Right. Or a few weeks ago, something came in around her feeling love when I expressed curiosity around one of her interests. The timing was not ideal when she was bringing something up. I was kind of running out the door and, I was focused on the next thing and she was raising a topic and I'm like, okay, Scott, here it is. Apply it. It's like, take a deep breath, enter kind of that more curious state and just, listen. So there's a couple interesting things about it. It created a moment, right, for us that we wouldn't have had, right? Had I not had the specific knowledge of how she feels of it, and had I not been reminded of it, I still have to do it. And I want to be that man for her. It's not, the app didn't do it for me. It helped me be who I want to be, right? Cool. And then over time, it actually drops down and changes my heart even more profoundly, as I internalize these very nuanced ways that she experiences love. And then, not too long ago, there's a difference between your spouse tolerating, let's say, you going out with your friends or doing something away from the family and giving it their blessing, right? So Melissa's saying, hey, Scott, I know you enjoy spending time with your friends. I hope you have a great time. It's like, oh my gosh. So in of itself, you're like, wow, okay, that's great. They had a moment. But Lisa, to your point, it's like, if we're tipping couples towards love on a Tuesday and a Thursday in week 1, and then we tip them again on week 2, and you create this virtuous cycle of loving behavior. And then there's more warmth, there's more grace. We are living out our faith, right? And what our faith calls us to be in our marriage. And it just builds. Yeah. It builds this positive, loving momentum.
Some of the prompts that I've gotten, I've actually applied later because I didn't know it was like even that you saying you holding her is like, you would know to do that again at a different time. Yes. And so that I wouldn't even need to be prompted. I'm like, oh, this is the moment, because there are things that I didn't know that would matter. What are you laughing at?
The timing is really important. Like when you actually, like there's been a few times that I've tried to act on a prompt. It was just a wrong timing. One of Lisa's is when I kiss her neck. And so I remember the first time it came up, I tried to sneak up behind her and
it scared me.
Kiss her neck. And she's like, what are you doing? And so you actually have to kind of, timing's everything, I guess.
Yeah.
Right?
But you know what? And I know I was like, I appreciated the attempt. And then it was kind of actually funny that it scared me instead of it being like a moment. Yeah. But it still was a moment. It was a funny moment. And I am the queen of shenanigans. I love jokes. I love playing jokes. So you actually, if it was a love language, it would be one of mine. Playing jokes on people.
Absolutely. Even that was a moment. Even that was a little misfire. Yeah.
That's right.
That's awesome. Yep. Well, we think it's a powerful app and a great tool. We were processing before this conversation just about how we would share it with even couples who are getting ready to get married. That's maybe a wedding gift, for new couples, because that, those first 5 years, really, that first year is important, but the first 5 years that they can build that virtuous cycle of showing intentional love towards one another is so important. And then, we work with a lot of couples who, like yourself, who are just trying to get a foot forward, trying to work on their marriage, and having a tool like this could be so helpful in breaking some bad patterns of acting accidentally in your relationship with one another and having some intentional steps to do that. If somebody's listening today, how would you encourage them to take advantage or jump onto the platform?
Yeah, so you can find the app in a few different ways. So we have it on iOS devices and also Android devices, so Google Play. And you would search for Act Agape, all one word. There are other Agape apps that are definitely not what we're talking about. So you want to make sure you find the right one. It's ACTAGAPE, all one word. Act Agape, lasting marriage. So you can get it there. You can also go to our website, actagape.com.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you download the app, create your Agape list, invite your partner, kind of, dig into the app. And it's key that in order to activate that free trial, like the 30 days free, you need to subscribe to Act Agape Plus. And that's important because that is what turns on the love notifications, right? So it's not enough to just build your Agape list. You need to have it sort of showing up in the midst of your everyday life. And that's an important step. And that's also how you get the 30 days free. So yeah, and just dig in and take the Love DNA scan. And the one thing I would highlight is an app is just an app. Okay. An app is not going to change your life. Okay. But if you have the mindset and the heart of, I want to love my spouse better and more effectively, this is a very, very powerful tool that will help you do that. Right. But it's just a tool. It requires the mindset and the heart. And then we help you live out that intentionality.
That's so good. That's so good. Yeah, we'd encourage everybody who's listening to get on, subscribe, do the 30-day free trial, that you're going to be able to experience it and see how it makes impact in your marriage. And it will make impact in those first 30 days. And we'll put all the information in the show notes. We'll make sure that you get the right spelling and the right app. But we would really encourage you to do it. Scott, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being on the podcast. And we're just very thankful for your investment in marriages. And thank you for you and the team that have created this great tool. And we're looking forward just to seeing how it's going to continue to impact marriages. And honestly, we're excited to hear from our audience. And if you get the app, you use it, let us know how it's going. Send us a direct message at Art Espousing or email us at hello@artespousing.com. We love to hear your story and kind of champion these tools for other marriages. So thanks again, Scott, for being with us today.
James and Lisa, you're both awesome. Thank you so much for having me and asking good questions and for our shared vision of, trying to help marriages thrive. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks again, Scott, for being on the podcast. And then thank you for all the listeners who listened today. We really hope you'll take advantage of the 30-day trial of Act Agape. You can download the app for both iPhone and Android. And I also put a link to the website in the show notes.
I think this is timely, Act Agape, in the week of Thanksgiving, because we could be thankful for our spouses and speak words of affirmation, help clean some dishes, and, all the good stuff. So as we
I'll do that.
Yeah. Okay. As we wrap up today, we want to wish you and your family a happy Thanksgiving. If you have any questions or comments about what you heard today, we would love to connect. Email us at hello@artespousing.com. You can also message us on Instagram at Art Espousing. We would also love for you to sign up for our email list. With every episode, we send out an email with a direct link to the show and some news about what's happening with Art Espousing. You can sign up with the link in the show notes or in our Instagram bio.
On the next episode, Lisa, you and I are going to be sharing some of our insights around some questions that we were recently asked at a re-engage event that we spoke at.
I know it's going to be great because these are real live questions from people. And I was like, this is what Art Espousing listeners are looking for also. So I'm really excited about it.
That's right. We hope you'll join us for that. Have a fantastic week, and we will see you next time. Until then, bye-bye.